Hello, everyone, and welcome to Request Management Isn't Just for IT Anymore. My name is Tabitha Ishman, and I'm the Marketing Manager of Excalibur Data Systems. And I just wanted to welcome everyone today and let some more people trickle in. And before we get started, we are going to talk about a few logistics. So as you can see, your lines have been muted and the webinar is being recorded. The recording will be sent via email to all the participants tomorrow, and we'll answer questions at the end in a Q&A session, but you can ask questions at any time during the presentation just by typing them into the question or chat section. So a little bit about Excalibur Data Systems is that we are a leading edge consulting firm guiding organizations through their digital transformation journey. Excalibur has had a long-standing relationship with Archer Consulting, and that's why we're very excited to be co-presenting with them today. So now the next slide, we'll talk a little bit about Archer. Archer was founded in 2017 and specializes in the optimization and delivery of high-value administrative services for law firms. And you can learn more about Archer by visiting their website listed here on the slide. And I know we have a lot of great information for all of you today, so I'm going to let Mike Fuson, VP and Senior Solution Architect of Excalibur Data Systems, get us started.
Hello, everyone. Mike Fuson here from Excalibur Data Systems. I'm joined with, by Jim McGinnis from Archer. Jim, you want to say hi?
Hello. Hey, everybody.
And so what we're going to start off is actually a poll question. So what is the greatest challenge for your firm? And Tabitha is going to throw up a poll that everybody can see. And so is it efficiency? Is it turnaround time, ability to hand off work, or ability to report metrics on work being done? And we'll give everybody a moment here to answer that question, and then Tabitha will show us our poll results. And so what we see is that 60% of you said efficiency, and 40% is the ability to report metrics on work being done. Kind of not a surprising thing, I don't think, Jim.
Nope.
Something we hear quite often is, gaining that efficiency and then also being able to report on the things that we're doing. So one of the first items we're going to get to is why you should make the switch from your legacy ITSM system. One of the things that is a challenge for a lot of customers that Jim and I have a chance to work with is, they may be sitting on a platform that is based on older or out-of-date technology. And so when you look at some of the current platforms that are out there and some of the capabilities that those platforms have, they give you a lot of this new functionality, new interoperability with many of the software. So you think about Office 365 and Teams and all these things that we're all doing today. And because they're mainly built out of the box and the more advanced ones are codeless, they're also offering you the ability to really focus on the customer experience and not having to worry so much about the coding within those systems. And you're also moving to more of an adaptive platform, so you're able to grow really into that enterprise service management. You'll get the most out of solutions by being able to extend into departments like human resources and finance, marketing, document processing, facilities, administrative support. Many of those things we're going to kind of talk about in specific relief today. But when we start to look at all of this, these are the things that really are our drivers. Some of the other drivers include things like, the better platforms that are out there don't charge you by module. So, if you want to do self-service, it's included as part of the platform. Cost of maintaining and supporting the traditional suites, as we've seen over and over, tend to be somewhat costly. Upgrades can be super costly, and a lot of that goes away as these platforms are more based on the more current technology, leveraging the codeless capabilities, having the option of cloud or on-premise as alternatives can be very, very key. And it can be hugely important that there is the option, because depending upon the particular customers that you're serving, or you may have certain regulatory requirements or ways that you want to control your data, that can all drive whether or not having it in the cloud versus having it on premise can be hugely important. I always use the example that I've seen as we work with various entities that are out there. Perhaps they're dealing with things that maybe in the government sector and have some sort of security requirements or some sort of secrecy requirements, or it could be HIPAA, depending upon what you're doing, or any number of the various acronym-laden regulatory requirements that are out there, and being able to bring that as an on-prem system where you're able to control various aspects within your infrastructure can be preferable, but also that same ability to have that hosted out in the cloud may be preferable as well. The systems that we really work with and that Jim and I enjoy are the ones that use the same code base. So moving from one to the other doesn't require some sort of massive conversion process in order to do that. And then, of course, out of the box ITIL type processes that are in there for the IT department that help you mature more quickly, and also align other departments that, as we've said, request management isn't just for IT anymore. Being able to align a request management process with best practices that already exist within ITIL. And then also better and more detailed audit capabilities as you're able to audit the data, audit actions, audit workflows. Jim, what are some of the other things that you've seen as big drivers as we work with customers in making the move from the legacy ITSM platforms?
Yeah, the biggest thing that I see, and having been a CIO at large law firms, these systems that are around and have been around for a while were originally designed to be inward facing. So to improve the efficiency and process of the IT teams themselves, and a little less customer facing, because most of the interactions were taken through telephone or email and then translated by the IT folks into their ticketing or incident system. When you start looking at the newer systems, because they're able to turn around and more easily face the client, it gives them a better opportunity to expand the use across the departments. And also because of the change in the pricing, where you're going from very strict per user, we had to have named users even, expensive incident tracking, you're now in a situation where you're able to go to a less cost per seat concurrent user model, which is really important, especially for global firms, because they're able to leverage follow the sun in their licensing costing. And you only have to have enough seats for the maximum number of people on at any given hour. It really makes an advantageous switch. Also, the switch to having portions of the platform not require licensing, which is especially important in this remote work environment. You can create dashboards that are visible to everyone. So when people are working at home alone, they can get a sense from a dashboard that can be up on their screen of how busy the rest of their team is, how busy different departments are within the firm as far as requests servicing the attorneys. So there are a lot of advantages to an updated platform, both from a cost and a usability perspective.
So we have another poll question here, and this is: how are your requests initiated today? And we're going to ask you to check all that apply for this. So is it phone, email, in person, self-service? You're not sure? There's a lot of different ways that requests are initiated by folks and by the users that are out there. And as Jim said, the move to the newer and more capable platforms give us the ability to have this be more outward facing. So 60% by almost everybody said some are coming in via email. No surprise there, right, Jim?
Yep.
We see that so often, and in the in-person and a small amount in self-service portal as well. So let's talk a little bit about what some of the efficiencies are
And
that can
let's
be.
talk about that in-person answer, which is, I think, important, because one of the things that Archer focuses on with our clients is helping them think about workflow and process, uh, and moving it from a role-based thinking methodology, which would lean towards in-person, i.e. an attorney walks out of his office and asks his secretary to get something done, to more of a distributed approach, which has been brought on by, has always been talked about as more efficient, but has certainly been brought on by remote work and remote teams. So you're trying to replace that in-person where someone may not even know who the in-person person would be to go to, and certainly not while working remotely. So having that ability to get into a self-service portal where you're submitting work and you're less concerned about who you're handing it to and more about that it's done in a timely and quality fashion.
But looking at that gain in efficiency, Jim, and looking at a self-service portal as kind of that gateway, if you will, it's getting away from that shared mailbox, right? I know for many of the firms that we've collaborated on, one of the greatest challenges is for a particular group that's looking to really doing, service requests. They're taking requests and they're processing them. Those come into this shared mailbox. Yep. Everybody's looking at this shared mailbox. Nobody knows who read that email, and usually you see some sort of folder schema that things are moved into. It gets very difficult because you're trying to all manage it. It's like everybody's sharing a tablet of paper and like passing it around, and everybody puts their own little notes on there. Do we do it in different colors? How do we do it? It becomes very inefficient to manage the work that's coming in. And while one of the first steps that we always talk about with customers is being able to still leverage that mailbox, because that's what the users and your customers are used to, but being able to move that into your full service request management platform and create that request within the platform from the email, and then work the request from there. We're going to start to migrate them to more of a self-service portal where they can get more out of it, but you don't have to necessarily cut it off right out of the gate. It's one of the beauties of these platforms is we still can consume that email, but we're now not managing in that one shared mailbox, right? But in moving it to the portal, it does give them more direct access to make the requests. I think of some of the cool things we've done with a number of the firms around their marketing departments. And they type the email and send it in, and then somebody has to send an email back because they can't translate what's been asked for within the email. Whereas in that portal, they go, I want this. And it may ask them some questions so we can get further information to better handle that. And that is providing and helping to manage that workflow. Or it simply gets the request into our hands and we know now what they're asking for.
One of the best days during a deployment is turning on that shared mailbox ingestion, because you get these folks that are suddenly, untethered from that mailbox, and the creatures of habit, the attorneys, can continue to send their emails and work as they were working. So you're not trying to change everything at once. And then when, as you said, when you start introducing them to, wow, you just had to write that 2-paragraph email. If you go to the portal, it's really 3 clicks to describe what you just had to write 2 paragraphs about, and you're ensured that they got the right message with those 3 clicks, as opposed to interpreting those 2 paragraphs of an email. So it lets you make a nice, smooth transition.
But no matter which method they're putting it in, though, it gives us that ability to start to manage that workflow, and then starts to drive towards that better status reporting, and hopefully reducing call-ins. If as we see customers start to embrace the portal, they can go see, well, what's the status of what I have that I've asked for. They don't have to call and find out, okay, where does this stand? They can see it right from the portal. But also from a team perspective, and from the managers of the teams and on up the food chain, they have, as you talked about earlier, the dashboards, which then start to give us that visibility into what's going on, what's the team's workload, who's doing what, and by allowing that customer to self-serve, they're able to take care of their part of it, but also the teams are able to better manage that work that's going on. And one of the last bullets here, and I want you to talk about this because you have some neat insight into this, is the distribution of the work regardless of time or location.
Right. So before the pandemic, we were working with firms to create managed and shared services, which sometimes changed the relationship between a manager and their team because they weren't always in the same location. So, to avoid micromanaging, but give the manager a sense that they knew what was going on, the creation of dashboards that are providing real-time data about the workload on their team was very useful. And also, it gives the ability for work to go into a common queue and people to work across offices, across time zones, across international regions to make sure that you've got 24 hours of productivity working the problems and the deliverables for your end users. Also, what's nice about from a portal perspective is when you think about it, not only from the administrative management portion, it's really nice to develop some dashboards up the legal practice side of the dashboard. So a practice area leader can see a dashboard of all of the requests that his practice area are generating towards the administrative staff. So they get an understanding and also see from across the firm how busy the administrative staff is in general. So they get a better understanding and sensitivity about ebbs and flows in the availability of administrative function. And that also helps from the administrative side to work with the lawyers and stakeholders in the firm to talk about staffing availability, workload, work sharing, all things that are coming up as we try to figure out how to get people back into the office. We have one client, they were doing the math about, 2 people in an elevator, how long it would take to get everybody in and out of the building. And the result is, if you actually get to a point of everybody coming in, but still are using some COVID safety factors, you're going to have longer work days with people coming and going at different times, possibly extend into a 6-day work week so that you can have coverage. And these kind of tools aid in making the work flow smoothly around all of these changes to how people work.
It's interesting because that was a kind of an interesting anecdote. And I just actually talked to my son last night. And he was talking about he works for a defense contractor. And because some of the work that they need to do are on systems that you can't access from the outside, it's gotten very complicated of them kind of doing the shift scheduling. So folks can come in to do the things they have to do in the office versus things they can do at home, and leveraging some sort of platform to know the work that needs to be done would be much easier than 10,000 emails flying back and forth of, well, you're going in on Thursday at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, and can you take care of this while you're, all of those sort of things. You're able to start to manage it and reduce that turnaround time, right? That's the goal, is we want to get that turnaround time reduced, and so we're able to better manage, the work queues that are out there. And so you start to look at that from how it drives a lot of the goals of the firm, right? Which is creating the better communications with the requesters that are out there. There's a steep learning curve for a solution, and it can stand in the way of people using it and taking advantage of the functionality by being able to better communicate with them. Hey, we've received it, and they have visibility into, okay, they've got it. They're working on it. Here's how I could go check my update status on it. We're able to really better communicate what's going on. The ease of the requester interaction with the delivery personnel. So rather than trying to manage that interaction through that shared mailbox, or maybe in somebody's individual mailbox, we're going to talk about how important this is here in a moment, is the ability to be able to do that from within the platform and have that response come back into the platform. So everybody that's looking at it's on the same page. Easily adaptable outside of IT, right? That's a key feature set in the platforms that we're so excited about, is that, it works great for IT, but it also works great for all the teams that are not in IT, but that are doing a request management process. And the Codeless capabilities, it lets us more quickly adapt the system, lets us more quickly also adapt our processes. As you start to work on something and you want to adjust the process, you can mature it very, very quickly versus it's going to be a multi-month process in order to get all the code in place and tested and everything else. And then one platform versus multi-platform. Rather than there being siloed sets of data out there, we're able to manage more firm-wide. And I know you have some specific thoughts on some of these topics, so I wanted to get your input as well.
Sure. We've got another client that we've just started working with, and the Codeless platform, I can't stress enough how important that is because there are a lot of platforms out there that are more sophisticated, but also require more maintenance and effort. And one of our clients is in a situation where they want a request system for their administrative side, and the IT group made a significant investment in a platform promising that they would develop portals for the rest of the administrative teams. And what they found is because it is not a codeless platform that's easily configurable, it's taking so much bandwidth for them to get IT working that they can't even give a date for when the rest of the firm can start leveraging that platform. So it's really important. And we've had some firms where the administrative side is actually able to pick a platform independently, and we've brought it in, and then IT has said, hey, that looks pretty good. Let's start using it in IT. That's happened, so that's been really great. But the other thing about codeless platforms is that you're getting into a situation where you also don't have to synchronize update requests. So even if all of the departments are using a similar system, if the system is too complex, when somebody in HR needs to add a field or change a workflow, it has to go into queue, so it happens with the rest of system configuration changes or code changes. In models of some of these newer systems that we've worked with Excalibur, although it's all one system, which really helps from a siloed, breaking the silos between the departments perspective, the functionality can be changed without affecting the other groups leveraging the system. So if HR needs a change, the change can be made and not affect IT or marketing or new business intake, all who are using the same platform. And because they're all in the same platform, you get to the C-level and equity partners of the firm looking at what's going on within the firm. They're able to see an apples to apples comparison of data across requests from each group. And there are plenty of great individual products that handle HR requests, that handle finance requests, that handle marketing requests, that handle document processing requests. But at the end of the day, then if you want any kind of firm-wide reporting, pulling all that data into one platform is difficult at best. And when you leverage a platform that is highly adaptable, you can get all that data being created and worked with in a similar platform, which gives you really easy reporting capabilities. Some of the things. Oh, go ahead.
No, I was just saying, and with the platforms that we've worked with, Jim, you also have the ability to a degree to silo off the different groups.
Yes.
So HR has their own sandbox to play in, but they really don't see IT stuff. IT doesn't see HR stuff because, of course, that could be very sensitive information.
Yes, very important.
And then, your firm-wide administrative services has their own thing, and they don't see the other two. But you're all servicing the same group of customers.
Right.
Right, the employees of the firm, and so you have the ability to do some segmentation, really from a security perspective, within the platform to let those groups do their things. And as you noted, each group, because they have their own process, they can continue to adapt their own process without having any impacts on the other groups that are also doing certain things. And it was interesting as you went through that list, right? It's requests for HR requests. It's administrative service requests. We're all doing request management at the end of the day. All of it. There's different data we need to collect, different information we need to do, but the processes still are the same. The who, what, where, when, where, and why. Yeah. And we're able to collect those, but also have that segmentation. But we also have the concept of follow the sun in many firms today. Or even just follow the sun across, just the time zones within North America. And that creates its own set of challenges as well. And these platforms help with that as well. And I know you have some interesting insights on that also.
Sure. One of the things that comes up, I have an interesting example. One global firm that we started handling marketing requests for. First there was a head scratching from senior management about, what do you mean marketing requests? And I'm like, well, there's a lot of stuff that goes on that marketing does all day, every day, and it's hard to quantify. The first year the system was up, they processed 50,000 marketing requests, which was amazing. And marketing is everything from event scheduling to bio edits to collateral requests. I need pens for this seminar. I need new business cards. I need a new headshot. I need my bio updated. And the bio update is a really interesting thing because we were kind of rolling out softly, and our bio edit team was based in the U.S., but some of the European folks got wind of there were new bio editors in the U.S., and suddenly these requests were coming in from all over the world saying, we've read some of your new bio edits, please do ours. It really aided in that. And then we also had a great experience with some of these requests that didn't need to be processed in real time, because they could also be then pushed to other regions and countries as time permitted. Same with research around new business intake and conflicts. Doesn't necessarily have to happen in the time zone that the request is being made in, and it lets you really turn the work around faster, because a lot of this is a typical scenario that I've seen. Partner comes back from a meeting, went really well. It's 5:30, 6 o'clock in the evening in the East, and they're like, we need to get this matter opened. Let's get the process started. And the East Coast is already wrapping up their day, but there are certainly people available in the West that can start that process. So the next morning or even during the night, that client and matter number is open and available for billing, which is a key metric in utilization and getting time not thrown into a temporary suspense number or just not recorded at all while you're waiting for it to clear conflicts. And the same with document processing and transcription. Again, doesn't need to happen in the time zone of the person making the request, and you can have folks available in less expensive regions or time zones that can keep that 24/7 appearance without the cost of 24/7 within a work environment.
And as we were talking about, the platform and like an email communication and getting a clarification or whatever it may be is all stored within the system. So even if different team members are working on it, you're all working with the same set of data. It's not trying to go to the shared mailbox, hopefully they put it all in the right folder and try to put the pieces together. You're able to see all of the things that may have gone on for whatever that request is that you're working with, or see the notes from the last person that worked on it. And maybe there was some communication back and forth between a person on the East Coast and a person that's in a more westernly time zone. They've given them some sign-off notes of here's where I kind of finished up or wrapped up or stopped, and they're able to read that and pick it up, and it's all documented within the system to be able to start to just continue that process forward. And it's real easy to track who all's touched it and what all's gone on, right? You get that full picture as to what's going on with that one singular body of work, which seems so silly, right? Why would we be so worried about that one singular body of work? Well, it's always the one that's you're not paying close attention to that goes sideways, and everybody wants to know what happened. But now you can track actually what's happened with that and how we've progressed it.
Yeah, it happens too
we
often.
Have another poll. We have another poll for everyone here.
Sure.
For a moment, or you want to jump in, Jim?
No, just back to the shared mailbox thing. I can't tell you how many times the problem was that the person picking up the job after the last person didn't scroll to see the most recent change request from the original requester and is working 2 emails behind, saying, wait, this doesn't match what they've asked for. So these kind of systems prevent that.
Right. So how do you track requests now? We're going to ask you to select only one. So is it through multiple systems, a shared mailbox, siloed platforms, a shared core platform? how are you tracking your systems now? So kind of about what we expected. The majority are doing it through a shared mailbox. That's the pretty common practice today. And when you start to then drive forward, through multiple systems, so you have to enter it in multiple places. We sometimes call that swivel chairing. So I'm going to put it in this system, and I'm going to swivel chair to this monitor and put it in this system. And it can be a little daunting at times to manage all of that. So, handling the requests, one of the things that we've loved about the platforms that we've been able to work with are being able to leverage omni-channel methods for the request to be raised. Now, in person, not so much right now in the world of what I like to refer to as Rona times. As we're all, and for so many of us working from home, it's hard to do it in person. But we have a number of customers that very recently, before today's world, had walk-up service desks or walk-up request capabilities, and that can be built into the system as a method to be able to do your intake. Phone, email, self-service portals. We're getting into the world of bots now, and being able to do that, or even online chat, as many of us have, I'm sure, experienced with various organizations we may interact with, where the online chat can be a lot quicker than sitting on hold for an hour, hoping to talk to a human being. And certainly, email may or may not be the most efficient, because I think we're all drowning in email as it is anymore. But being able to adapt very complex workflows to make them repeatable and consistent. That's one of the things that we've loved with these platforms, and the abilities that we're able to bring to the table with these platforms is the ability to make those processes not be unique every time. It's repeatable and it's consistent, and then adapting the processes to be flexible working, as we talked about working from home, being able to all be able to see into that, even though we all may be sitting in our own little home office or office space and dealing with our coworkers that might be furry or might otherwise be running around and showing us what they're doing. And then also, that's put most organizations and most firms, Jim, as you talked about, with the whole how do we get everybody into the building where we can only have two people in an elevator, where this has really now become that distributed workforce. Right. This work from home has kind of changed so many things, and then following the sun, and then the managing of the shared work. How do we make that as efficient as possible? Omnichannel and the ability to make those workflows repeatable tend to really drive a lot of value and efficiency, as we've seen for organizations. Jim, what are you seeing with that?
Yeah, I think repeatable and consistent is very high value as you're doing things. But what's nice for firms today is that these systems that are newer, and again, codeless, it's very easy for someone within a work group or a department to quickly change workflows based on situation. So, as things change by city or region or country about who's in, who's out, where the work needs to go, and in what order, it's very easily changeable by the users. Certainly, Archer and Excalibur are always there for any changes that they feel they'd rather not make themselves. But it's really helpful for a word processing supervisor or someone similar to that to be able to change the workflow on a particular document type based on what's going on around them.
Well, and Jim, I think I gave the example, one of the very, very first implementations we did of the Sharewell Service Management platform was for a law firm here in Pittsburgh. And as you pointed out, it was actually for one of the practice areas before IT ever jumped on the platform. And it was for their Medicare practice area, which was a new practice area that firm had picked up over the years of working with Jim, I've learned a lot about how law firms operate and how practice areas move around to different law firms. And they had picked up this Medicare practice, and they had looked at multiple systems to be able to manage their workflow. And their workflow was fairly streamlined and extremely repeatable. But they were looking at systems where if they bought that particular system, they were going to use 10% of the capabilities within that system and not use the rest of it. And it was going to be at a fairly high ticket price. And what we were able to do with the shareable service management platform is build a very repeatable process where, it starts out at step one, moves on to step two, possibly requires an approval, and then moves on through the workflow. And you could pick up any particular case they were working on and just visually know exactly where it was in the process and see all of the details of all the different hands in many cases that were involved in dealing with that case. And that's but one example of how a very capable platform, in this case, shareable service management, gave us those capabilities. And that was, 8, almost 10 years ago that was put in. And these platforms and technologies have just gone through iteration after iteration of new capabilities and new things that they're able to do, where we now have all of these different omni-channel supports where we've gone beyond self-service and into bots and online chat. But one of the core tenets of these platforms is that workflow engine, being able to drive a workflow process through a system that could include approvals. And I think, Jim, a lot of the things that go on within law firms, there are steps within various groups' processes that may require an approval. Because I'm going to guess, like most organizations, it's due to, there may be an expenditure of funds, maybe to do something.
Yep, absolutely.
And so that has to go through a process.
Yes, one of the things about law firm management is there are a lot of signatures required for a lot of things, and being able to flow a quick email through generated by the system so people can see what the request is and click approve or deny is hugely useful. One thing we didn't touch on that I think is important when we were talking about cloud versus on-prem, one of our common clients also had the unfortunate problem of having been hit by ransomware. And at the time, their request management system was part of their internal infrastructure, which also meant that as they were trying to rebuild and repair after the ransomware attack, they also were without their request management system. So one of the advantages to moving to a newer system that is cloud-based is that even if the worst happens and your internal systems are down, your team that is supporting you to try to get everything back up and running has a system that is independent of the firm's infrastructure so that they can continue to track and manage the move back to full functionality.
What are some of the other challenges when you start to look at driving these workflows that we see that gets common amongst law firms? Because law firms have a lot more administrative activity that go on than, say, a typical business. Because when you're dealing with the courts and all of the things that a law firm does, there's unique departments within the firm that do certain things that help us drive that are different than maybe a typical business. I know you guys work with firms to help them improve those processes, and so being able to drive that with your automation platform and your tool, that starts to drive additional capabilities and those efficiencies for the firm.
Right, and what's nice about getting into a system that is giving you some metrics, especially when it's a multi-step process, and again, back to the one system for the whole firm, handling things like onboarding, offboarding, that cross departments. So facilities is involved because they need to set up an office. IT is involved because they need to issue hardware. HR is involved because they need to go through all of the HR processes around becoming an employee. When it's a single system, the requests are moving through the same system, so you can see how things are flowing, and you can do set up workflows with both serial and parallel tasks. So, item 4 can't happen until item 3 is completed, but once you get to item 4, 5, 6, and 7 can also start at the same time. Don't need to be in that part of the process. So that's really important. And as we're working with firms to work on optimization of workflows, when you start looking at some of the metrics delivered by platforms like this, you can find the choke points where, why did this particular step in this overall workflow take so long? So you can really aim at making that particular point more efficient, or putting more horsepower on that point so it's not holding up the rest of the process.
So again, driving back to that overall metrics, right?
Yep. Mm-hmm.
And an understanding of the process. That system helps lay some of those things bare. In an automation across the firm, what does that look like? And being able to automate notifications. So when somebody requests something or there's updates that need to go out, you're able to automate those, so somebody doesn't have to constantly be typing out emails. The system can handle a lot of that. Flexible approval processes, both serial and parallel approvals, depending upon what the workflow or the need may be. And then really importantly, and Jim, we've talked about this a lot, is the flexible approval methods.
Yes.
Right. Email, self-service portals, they can come into the system and of course approve it, but giving the flexibility so those approvals don't become that choke point. Because all too often, that is an area where it can create a choke point for a process to move forward. And then delegation of approval authority. And so how does this give you more flexibility? So, as a manager, I know I'm going to be out, and so I want to delegate my approval authority to Tabitha. Well, I can come into the system, delegate my authority to start at a certain time, end at a certain time, and during that time period, anything that would come to me for approval, Tabitha also would get notified that approval is out there, and she can approve on my behalf because I've delegated that authority. And that that makes it work really, really well for me to have that flexibility as a manager. But I know, Jim, we talked a lot about the flexible approval methods really have an impact.
Right. And also, if you forget to delegate your authority, the system can also have timers and other triggers to route it to someone else for delegation, for approval, so that you're not hanging on a manager who might not be available and didn't have time or remember to, reroute the workflow because of their not being available. So there are a lot of other triggers that can act as fail-safes to keep things moving.
Well, excuse me. One of the things I used to hear, from and still do to some degree, although the world's a little bit different now, is folks that were approvers, wanting that ability because they may be moving from meeting to meeting, mm-hmm. to be able to easily and quickly, like through an email, be able to approve something, and not have 9 flaming hoops they have to jump through in order to grant that approval and let something move forward through a process. Right. One of our customers used to talk about they took mass transit. And so the ability to be making the ride home and kind of checking their email and right from their cell phone, be able to make an approval and let something continue to move through the process without that being the bottleneck, which so often approvals are where a bottleneck occurs. And so by being able to expand out the various and flexible methods that allow for approval, it gives them the ability to react quickly and easily to those things that occur. Other thoughts, Jim, you have on what some of the drivers that the bringing in a automation platform like this for especially the other teams beyond IT really does, and what you've seen it do for the firms that we've worked with.
Yeah, it's really remarkable. And back to that concept of different areas of expertise have vendors that have platforms for their area of expertise. One of the reasons that Archer has always recommended leaning on an ITSM-based platform is the level of complexity around certain technology and security and IT requests is probably the high bar in things you would need to track in any given workflow. So being able to take that system and adapt it to workflows across other groups is very easy, and it also gets you into a system that your IT folks know and understand. So when they're supporting you internally to help you with this platform, it makes it very easy. And we've just seen great adoption in once again, my favorite day of deployment is turning on the shared mailbox ingestion. Once one department sees that turn on and they start selling it internally to the other departments and say, look at this, look at what we're doing now, the move across departments becomes very easy. So once you have that leader changing how they're delivering work, everybody quickly wants it too, including IT if it hasn't come in through IT.
And I just had the pleasure at the Sharewell online Clear conference here over these past couple of weeks. I was able to do a presentation with one of our customers who did exactly what we're talking about, which was they took a group that was largely email box and paper based and moved them into their Sharewell service management platform. It was actually their treasury department, right? So you start thinking about getting away from IT, right? HR kind of makes sense, facilities, and then you get into administrative support as we look at law firms. And now you're talking about the treasury department. These guys move these big sums of money around, but it really was just a request management process. And one of their challenges was around audit. Mm-hmm. And where is all the documentation of who approved what? Because somebody moved $1 million from X account to Y account. You kind of want to have documentation as to, did we validate everything? Was everything done that it needed to be? And leveraging the platform, and they were able to very easily mimic their existing process and then greatly enhance it because you're capturing all of these data points. And they're able to generate reports and do all kinds of things that were difficult to do before because it was kind of a mishmash of systems that were put together to do this. And they really talk about the efficiencies that were gained just by moving from a mailbox and a system that worked but wasn't optimal to bringing it into a platform that gave you the automation and the tracking capabilities that a platform like Sharewell Service Management as an ITSM platform does to leverage that. So it's kind of a cool story because you start to get away from IT. Okay, Treasury Department. That's pretty far. You're starting to get pretty far away, but the process was really not all that different. It was request management, as we're talking about today. We want to open the floor up to some questions because I know Tabitha pinged me and said we have a few questions from the audience. And so from the audience, feel free to go to the question section and type in a question for us, and we'll be happy to answer them.
Yeah, so we did have a few come in. And the first one that came in a little bit earlier was, are these next generation systems all able to be used? Are they web-based or web-enabled?
I'll give you the technical answer. The answer is yes. All of the platforms that that Excalibur and Archer have had the pleasure of working with for our customers are all web-enabled. So they are web-based. In the case of one of our favorite platforms, Sharewell Service Management, it also has an installable client for those that might prefer that as a way to do it. Now, not only are they web-enabled, but they can also be mobilely enabled. So you're able to use a mobile platform even to interact with the system, either as someone who is the person, we're going to call it the fulfiller, somebody doing the work, and tracking the work, but also from a management perspective and looking at a dashboard or looking up other data. It could be mobile, it could be web-based. The platforms that are out there provide that capability.
Right, and the rich client availability is really important for the folks actually fulfilling the requests, as Mike pointed out, because there's just that little extra performance boost about being able to cache more of your work environment locally rather than in a web-based solution. And the web-based solutions are highly efficient. They're not slow, but when you're the one fulfilling, you just that extra, half a second here and there makes your day.
Well, it also gives you that flexibility. We talked about on-prem versus a hosted solution. It gives you that option. Different people have different areas where they're comfortable, and so you're not stuck with, well, there's only one way to do it.
Right.
You have multiple ways that you can interact with the system.
Well, thank you. And then the second question that did come in is, are these platforms able to handle multi-languages?
So I can speak to the platforms we're most familiar with, Shareable Service Management and Halo ITSM, which are two of our favorite platforms. They are globally enabled, so you can support most of the common languages on Earth, even what are called multi-bit languages, where you get into Mandarin and all that sort of stuff. They have the ability to support multiple languages from all of the platform sides. So whether it be a rich client or the customer self-service portal or the technician side of things, can be done in multiple languages, and that's been the case in these platforms for many years. I think back to a project that I did up in Canada with one of their government entities, and in Canada, anything that the government does is required to be both in English and in French Canadian. It's a law. However, the technician side, everybody worked in English, but the portal for the customers needed to be in both languages. So you had some options. We didn't have to do everything in two languages. We could do part of the system in multiple languages, and it was able to handle the translations from within the system, and vice versa, where if you're doing the whole system multilingual, it can be put in one language here, and then you're looking at it in your language here. And other than some things like things people type that may need to go through a translation technology like Google Translate or something to translate the thing that's actually typed, most of the things that are selected and put in are all in whatever your language is that you have set within your system.
Thank you for that. So we just had one last question come in, so I'm going to ask that, and then Mike and Jim, you guys can give your kind of final comments, and then we can close out of the webinar. So the last question that came in was, are single sign-on capabilities available, and do most of these platforms offer this?
Yes, the platforms we love, as well as most of the common capable platforms that we're kind of referring to as part of our presentation today. The advanced platforms provide single sign-on capabilities, whether you're, and so many of us today are possibly using like Azure single sign-on from Microsoft, or we may be using a technology like Okta. Those are two of the most common that we see, but there's many others, ADFS and Shibboleth, and there's a whole bunch out there. If they are a SAML 2.0 compliant technology, with which most of the major ones out there are, they can be used to provide that single sign-on capability, or it could be more basic when you think of single sign-on as being just simply an LDAP or AD pass-through authentication as well into the system, so you're not having to sign on 15 different times. In addition, one of the things that's kind of nice is that the platforms give you the ability to actually set them up where if your security posture requires that additional authentication, you can actually require the authentication to occur again. So again, you're not painted into a corner where you've got to do it this way or that way. It can reflect the organization's needs as the organization has them set.
And that's what's nice about that, is it lets the solution become embedded in people's general work availability. So if they're always in the intranet, you can embed dashboards and request windows and all that within their normal intranet experience. So they're not jumping out to do something differently when they're being taught new ways to request work and manage work.
And we've seen that in intranets where, hey, I want to make a marketing request, and they click the button, and poof, they're on the marketing portal, and
right.
They go pick what they want. And to them, they don't have any idea that anything necessarily, other than they got a new screen, right, which they were expecting.
Yes.
Okay, I want to do something for marketing or HR
right.
or IT. All right, well, on behalf of Excalibur Data Systems and Archer NSG, I want to thank everybody for joining us today. Thank you for joining Jim and I. We will be making sure that this presentation is sent out to everyone that registered, but in addition, it will also be available on our YouTube channel to share with any of your coworkers or friends that you think you might find this valuable. And of course, Jim and I are always available, and our email addresses are in the presentation. I'm happy to answer questions that you may have. Jim, you have any final thoughts?
Sure. Yeah, again, thanks everybody for taking the time to listen to Mike and I banter about these topics, but they're near and dear to our hearts. I've spent a lot of time in the legal vertical, as have my team at Archer, and it's really part of our passion to help folks better manage the business of law. And this piece is just one aspect of that offering. So thank you for joining us.
Thanks, everyone. Have a great day.